You grew up in a small town. What role did music play for you in that small town environment growing up?
I think it was sort of it was really big in linking music to kind of community for me. So there was a markets every month, and there was always music at the markets. And for a little time, like for a little town, there was a lot of gigs and stuff that would come through, and the whole community would kind of get behind the gigs and go along. And so I always sort of, from a pretty early age, associated like music with friends and family and good times, and that was kind of what made me want to do it more often, if you know what I mean. It
Yeah.
was like I played sport a lot when I was a kid, because there wasn't, I mean, it was an amazing place to grow up, but there wasn't like heaps and heaps of things to do, or at least at the time it didn't feel like there was heaps and heaps of things to do, but sport and music were kind of the two things that I could do that kept me out of trouble.
Fair enough. How do you look back on some of those very early songwriting efforts of yours now? Do you see them in a different light now to how you did back then?
Yep, definitely. I'm playing a music festival this weekend, and I've been asked to be on a panel where we have to play the first song that we ever wrote.
Oh, wow.
And I'm kind of a bit nervous about that, because it's an absolute stinker. So, but you got to start somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, now I think it's just like hyper. That, you know, the music I was making back then was just someone trying to figure out how to do it, and also figure out how to kind of express themselves, and also, like, I was only about 13 or 14 when I started trying to write songs, so I didn't really have much to write about, but I was, you know, trying to write about things from my own life, so it kind of comes across as like just a bit over the top sometimes. When I listen, I mean, I don't listen to it really ever, but occasionally for something like this, where I've got to go back and have a listen and figure out what I was doing back then, it's not my favorite thing in the world to do, I must say.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to that theory? You do have to write a few stinkers before you get to the good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything, you know. I guess it's possible to write an incredible song first go, but I don't really think it's possible to write 10 incredible songs first go without writing some terrible songs
Yeah.
in there as well. So, I mean, I think you get better and better at, like, the more you write, you get better and better at sort of knowing what you're trying to do, and almost editing on the fly without realizing that you're editing. But, you know, it's not like everything that comes out of my mouth or my mind or my fingers the first time I try to write something is always going to be the best thing. So I still like try to kind of work on my songs and craft my songs until they're at the point that I feel like I can really stand behind them.
Yeah. Is there a certain point that you reach where you know the song requires no more editing? That is it. It's a finished product.
Yeah, I mean, it changes every time. But yeah, I guess that there's always a point that happens, or like, because if I don't get to that point, then I don't share the songs. So, like, I've got a bunch of songs that are sort of half written that I've just never really felt like I've kind of got over the line. But these days I do tend to, I find, like, I think it just comes down to knowing what you're trying to say and how you want to say it, because then you actually have something to sort of aim for. Whereas if you just kind of sort of just generally writing, I think you can get some really, really, really good stuff that way, but it's harder to know when it's finished.
Yeah.
Having said all of this, like, I think my favorite songs I've ever written, and probably the best songs I've ever written, did kind of come so naturally that it almost feels like you didn't really write them. They just kind of came through you, not to sound airy-fairy, but
Yeah.
that does happen occasionally. And it's an amazing feeling when it does, but I don't think you can just sit back and expect that to happen, you know, 10 times a year. I think the rest of the time you got to, like, work on it and try and craft the songs, because I think that helps you get better and makes those sort of transcendent moments happen more often.
So back to your 13-year-old self sitting down to write your first song. Who were the songwriters that were inspiring you back then?
Well, my mum she's always had a really good taste in music. So when I was growing up, she was always listening to like Neil Young and Nick Drake and the Beatles and Bob Dylan and all that sort of stuff. So I think I was always kind of exposed to that, and I always loved that music. But then when I was about 13 or 14, when I was starting to write my own music or try to write my own music, I didn't really want to sort of associate with the stuff that my mum liked. So I guess at that point, even though I'd been exposed to that for a long time, I was more listening to sort of heavier music, like Deftones, and but also I got really into John Mayer when I was about that age too, because I really liked the way he wrote songs, and I felt like there was a real, like, his songs had, but they were intelligently written, like there's a story in them, and clever turns of phrase and things like that I really got into at that point as well. So I think from a songwriting perspective, at that age, probably John Mayer. Yeah.
Do you ever switch off from being a songwriter? Like, is your radar always up when you're just going around doing your normal business during the day, thinking of ideas?
I'm not sort of like consciously thinking of ideas, but if an idea comes to mind, or if I feel some sort of inspiration, then I do always try to capture it somewhere. Like, I have a notebook that I just keep with me all the time, and I always write ideas in my notebook. I find having an actual physical notebook that I write in with a pen is way better for my creativity than just like keeping notes on my phone or whatever. Yeah. So I still do that the old school way. But I'm not sort of walking around constantly thinking, oh, that could be an idea for a song, or that could be an idea for a song. But I do find it really hard to sit in a cafe if there's a song that I, for some reason, just don't like playing. I find it hard to concentrate on conversation and stuff. Yeah. I feel like it just pulls my ear away, and it kind of gets a bit frustrating. My wife always sort of laughs at me because we'll be having a conversation and then she'll say something and I won't be listening. She'll be like, oh, is there something about this song that's bugging you?
You do a lot of travelling. Is songwriting something you can do when you're on the road, or do you leave that to when you're at home base?
No, I do heaps of writing on the road. I think like the whole thing of travelling for me that I love is when I go somewhere new, I feel like I notice everything way more. Like, I'm way more present and way more, just way more sort of alert to my surroundings, and also alert to not just the physical surroundings, but like just what's going on generally. So, what's happening within as well, because being in an unfamiliar place kind of does that. Like, if you're walking around the city that you live in, you sort of know it all off by heart, and you're not sort of in that heightened state. So I find that really inspiring, and I have written a lot of songs either while I'm traveling or that have been inspired by traveling. A lot of songs in like hotel rooms and stuff, because you got to do something when you get back from a show and you can't sleep.
Yeah. What about a time of day or night? Is there a best time of day or night to sit down and write?
Generally, sort of in the evening, and actually quite often sort of later in the evening when everyone's gone to sleep and it's quiet. It's really quiet because, you can think and there's no distractions and things can kind of just play out nice and clearly. So I do write during the day as well. I write all the time now, but I think the moments of like real pure inspiration tend to come later in the evening.
Yeah.
Which is kind of frustrating sometimes, because sometimes I'll be like ready for bed, I'll be really exhausted, and then I'll have this idea for a song, and then I need to stay up for another couple of hours to flesh it out.
To get it down, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, they say parenthood changes everything, and you've recently become a dad. What changes have you already gone through in the overall aspect of your music career because of being a father, and what do you envisage changing in the future?
I mean, everything has changed. So I'm still sort of trying to figure out exactly, how everything looks from this new perspective. I haven't been touring much or playing much since our son was born, because and that was very much on purpose. Like, I took this time off the road because I just wanted to be here and be present and be in the baby bubble. Mm-hmm. But I'm playing a festival this weekend. I'm kind of getting back into it. towards the end of this year, and then January next year I'm touring like all month, and I'm going to be away for quite some time. So that's going to be kind of tricky for me because I'm going to miss him.
Of course.
But I think like the biggest change has just been that it's just not about me and not about, you know, I am very much secondary, and obviously you need to look after yourself so that you can look after other people, but I just want to be a good dad. So I'm sort of learning at the moment how all that's going to fit together with touring and music, and I'm 100% sure that I'm going to keep playing music. I've actually just been finishing a whole bunch of new music that I'm going to be releasing next year, so there's heaps on the horizon, but yeah, it's going to be different. I'm just not exactly sure how yet.
Have you done any writing since the Blessed event?
Yeah, a little bit, but not as much. I did heaps and heaps of writing in the lead up because you know, I was feeling very inspired and very very kind of thoughtful. But yeah, I think I've only written about 2 songs since he was born, which is not that many for me in that period of time, but it's been quite busy, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, God, absolutely,
yeah. So, but I'm starting to write a bit more now. I've got a couple of songs kind of hanging around at the moment that I haven't been able to finish, but that I think are getting to a good place. So that's exciting.
So could we perhaps expect a more domestic element in your song matter?
Maybe. I don't know if people want to hear about me changing nappies.
There's a great storytelling element in your songwriting. What for you is the key ingredient for good storytelling, apart from a good story, obviously?
Well, I don't know. You tell me. I think I've always liked stories that have an arc. So I think, you know, having some kind of structure and it doesn't have to be an explicit structure. Like I think when I was younger, I was very much into very sort of lyrical and narrative stories where sort of there's an explicit story arc that happens, whereas these days I am much sort of, I'm enjoying playing around with just things being a little bit more metaphorical. But I think it's nice when there's some sort of development that happens. You know, you wouldn't want to watch a movie where nothing happens, would you? And a song can be like a little 3-minute movie. So I think it's just about developing ideas and developing an arc and then maybe resolving it. But this is changing all the time. I definitely don't profess to have some key to the way to tell a good story. I think it also depends on the story, doesn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. You are well travelled, as we touched on. Where are your strongest markets overseas, Jack?
The UK for sure. I've done a lot of touring in the UK, and we lived there for a couple of years. So, the UK, the US, I've toured there a few times, in Canada and New Zealand. They're sort of the places in the world outside of Australia that I can go and do my own gigs. And then also just Europe in general. I've done a bit of touring in Europe. I've played in Germany quite a bit, and France and the Netherlands quite a bit. So, I feel it's very, very fun to get out and play shows all over the place, and it's kind of let me travel the world and see a bunch of places that I might not have got to see otherwise. So that's been incredible, and I'm looking forward to getting overseas next year, and we're going to take our little one and get over to the UK and Europe and do some shows, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, wonderful family trip.
Yeah.
I loved your Hospital Hill album. Very much a collaborative effort working with Gus there, and the string quartet as well. What was the initial inspiration behind that?
Well, Gus and I have been friends since university, and he's an incredible bass player. He played in a band called Papa vs. Pretty, which were quite a well-known Australian band, and now he tours with a whole bunch of very big artists. But he's always played in my band, and not only that, we're sort of best mates. He was best man at our wedding, and a lot of people don't know this about Gus, but he's a classically trained cellist, and he's very, very clever in that world as well. And we'd always kind of talked about making a collaborative record together where he played cello and wrote string parts, and I, did my thing. And it kept getting pushed back, and I was releasing band records that he was playing on, and he was touring with his bands and various projects. And then eventually we're just like, let's just do this. So I had a bunch of songs written, and I sent him my demos of those, and he wrote the string parts, and then we kind of got together and workshopped it all, and then we literally just booked a studio in Sydney for 2 days and went in and recorded it all live in 2 days. So we did it very much on the fly, in the sense that we didn't have much time, and we didn't really have much preparation with the quartet either. We had one rehearsal, but we just got really, really incredible players who just nailed it, basically. So it was a really, really, it was kind of like being on a roller coaster or something. At the end of it, we're like, oh my God, we managed to pull that off.
Yeah.
But we weren't sure how it was going to go, but it was definitely one of the coolest musical experiences I've had, and I'm really, really proud of that record. Like, I think it really captures a moment in time.
Absolutely, yeah. So those songs weren't written with string arrangements in mind at all.
Oh yeah, they were. We've been talking about it for ages, and when I was writing for all my records, I'd occasionally write a song that I thought might work better for that. But at the time, until we decided to actually sort of do it, it was just sort of this amorphous thing in the future that we were going to do together. But I was kind of saving songs and banking songs for it over the couple of years before the record was actually made. But yeah, we didn't go into a room together and sit down and actually write songs together. I wrote the songs, sent them to him, he wrote the string parts. And then we got together and fine-tuned and fiddled with it all to make sure that we felt like it was cohesive, because we didn't want it to be just songs with string arrangements slapped on top. We wanted it to be very much a sort of holistic thing that was designed to fit together, and it wouldn't work in the same way without the quartet, if you know what I mean. The quartet is integral.
For sure. Is it a direction you'd like to go again?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that tour was one of the most fun tours I've ever done, playing with the quartet everywhere we went. And working with musicians like that is just incredible, because they're like elite athletes, you know. They can just sit down and just play anything. It's really, that level of dedication and professionalism is really something. And, you know, like I say that I have massive amounts of respect for contemporary musicians who are doing kind of more pop things, obviously, but it is kind of a different thing.
Yeah.
So that was a really amazing thing to sort of witness and be a part of.
Overall, though, through your records, there's been a real diversity of sound. You know, from the very stripped back acoustic folky sound to a more broader sound in more recent times, and of course the string quartet another direction. Do you get a little restless if you stay on the one thing for too long? Is that just in your nature to try new things?
Yeah, I just don't want to repeat myself too much. I think, like, I try to make each record capture a moment in time, because I think, like, it's inevitable that as we grow and change as people and get better at what we do and grow new perspectives, that you're not always going to necessarily look back on your past work and think, wow, that's great, in the same way that you're really proud of it the day that it's released. But I think if you can capture a moment and capture where you were, like, accurately and sort of honestly, then that's the whole thing. That's you can be proud of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's what I am always trying to do when I'm making and releasing an album. And I don't want to just release the same thing over and over again because it's easy or because that's the sort of simplest thing to market or whatever, because I think I'd get bored of writing and playing that music. Yeah.
So, life as an independent musician, what have been the major advantages and pitfalls that you've come across in your time?
Well, the advantages are that it's literally been my childhood dream come true to be able to live off, you know, making original music and tour around and meet all these incredible artists and people who I'm now lucky enough to call my friends, and you know, see cities that I never thought I'd get to see, and that's been quite literally a dream come true. But it's also, there's a lot of instability and stuff like that comes along with it, and a lot of really hard work. I don't think people realize how much work goes into really releasing and touring music. Like, it's not just, you go into a recording studio for an afternoon, record a song, and then travel around getting drunk for 6 months. It's actually it's actually a very, very difficult thing to kind of make work. So it's been, I wouldn't say it's been up and down. Like, I've been completely in love with it the entire way, but it's definitely, there's been entire years that were very challenging. But I think these days I look back on the way everything's kind of unfolded so far, and I feel very grateful because I'm in a situation where I'm getting to make the music that I want to make. I can travel and play it for people that want to hear it, and I'm sort of very much in control of what I'm doing. I'm not beholden to like a big label or someone like that to sort of do a certain thing in a certain way. I can just express myself honestly and do things that feel like they're true. So that's kind of the ideal situation, I think.
Yeah. There are like 1,000,001 singer-songwriters out there, but I don't look at it as like a competitive field. It seems to be like a big sense of community amongst you all. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, for sure. I think for the most part, every now and again you come across someone who seems to want to make it a competition, but they don't tend to end up sticking around that long, I find. But I think music, especially being an independent musician, it's something that you have to be compelled to do for reasons other than wanting to be, on stage in front of a whole bunch of people just purely for the ego or something like that. If you really want to do it, it's got to be about the fact that you are compelled to make music and share it with people. And so, it's, in that sense, it really truly isn't a competition. It's just about doing what you love and expressing yourself and celebrating people that are brave enough to try and go and put their music out there. Like, it's very hard to make things in the world, and I think these days it's easier than ever for just anybody to sit behind a keyboard and tear something down that someone else has put a lot of time into making. But it's awesome that people are making things,
Yeah. How about the studio environment? Is that an environment you enjoy? Do you like to go in there and tinker around, or do you prefer the more spontaneous way to record?
I really enjoy both. This new music that I've been working on, I recorded all myself. So I went into studios and stuff, but I went in on my own or just with one or two friends who were playing various instruments, and I engineered it all myself. And I did it that way because I wanted to be able to just completely take my time, spend as long as I wanted on like getting little things exactly how I wanted them. And if you're going into just a really expensive studio for a very set amount of time and you've got an engineer there, those sorts of time pressures kind of come in. So on this new record, I was sort of approaching it from a much more DIY perspective. But, as I was just talking about with Hospital Hill, we went in 2 days and just kind of did it. And that gave the record like a real energy as well. So I think there's advantages to both. It's just, I think you kind of just got to keep a perspective on what it is you're doing. Because these days with the technology that's available, literally anything is possible, really. So having the perspective of knowing what you're actually doing is more important than ever, because you don't actually have the limitations you used to have. And so it's very easy to kind of get off track.
Yeah. What about performing live? What are your favourite live sort of situations to be involved with? Is it the smaller clubs or?
I think like small halls. So my favourite gigs are like, 200 to 400 people in a beautiful hall. That's like perfect for me. And actually, luckily enough, that's what I'm going to be doing in January. I'm doing Festival of Small Halls, which is it's a touring festival that's organised by Woodford Folk Festival, and it kind of goes around to regional towns throughout Australia and puts on gigs in like community halls. So that's really exciting because that's going to be just my ideal gigs for a month.
Oh yeah, I was actually looking at that. I was looking at that online the other day. Some of the venues you're playing, there's just beautiful little halls tucked away in the middle of nowhere, aren't they?
Yeah, and they've all got some sort of history behind them, and And I was saying to someone the other day, like, it's amazing. It's really exciting that I'm going to be doing an Australian tour and playing like heaps of places, like probably more than half the places are towns that I've never even been to before. And that's pretty rare these days because, generally you go to the bigger towns when you're touring and we've all played those a lot of times now, which doesn't make it any less special and fun to go do gigs there. But I'm really excited to kind of like see another side of the country that I haven't seen before.
And what else is on your books for the new year? Obviously, there's a chance of a new album there, from the way you're talking.
Yep. Yeah. So I've got a whole bunch of new music that I'm going to be releasing. I'm not gonna say when yet. But yeah. So basically, I start the year off with Woodford Folk Festival and then Festival of Small Halls, and then I'll be releasing new music. So I'm going to be touring really heavily. I'm going to be touring across Australia and also going back over to the UK and Europe and touring over there. So that's going to be my 2020, is just basically new music and lots of touring.
Fantastic. Well, I'm hoping that Melbourne will be in there somewhere as well. We'd love to see you down here.
For sure. I love Melbourne. I was born in Melbourne.
You were? That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So it's sort of my hometown.
Homecoming tour, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for all your time, Jack. It's been fantastic catching up with you. Thanks for the wonderful songs to date, and no doubt there's many more to come.
Thanks for the support. I really appreciate it.
All the best. Thanks a lot.
Cool, man. See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.